Hey guys, so let's get into making this wig. Now this is a Upart wig cap that I got from my local beauty supply store. It was about $4 or $5, and this is my styrofoam head. It's been through war, but what can you do? And these are T-pins, and I'm going to show you what I need to use those for. And of course, you know, you're going to use needle and thread, which I probably didn't show you here. So I'm just going to unwrap you know, the wig cap. This is a left part cap because I couldn't find any middle part, so that's why you can see that it looks like a side part, because that's what the cap really is. So I'm just like taking the straps and tugging them through the loops, and then just kind of like pinning the wig down on all four corners. Now this is the closure I'm going to use. This is of course from Dainty Dream Hair. This is a 16-inch body wave closure, and what I'm going to do here is I'm basically remaking a wig with old bundles and just adding a closure. So yeah, so this is what the closure looks like fresh out of the pack. It's a free part closure, so I can part it anywhere I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to secure the closure with T-pins onto the wig cap. You can do this after you've sewn some bundles on, or you can do it before. It just depends on my mood, and today I've chosen just to kind of secure it first. Now when you're securing these, make sure it is taut, meaning that it's very tight on each end, not to rip, not tight so that it kind of rips the lace, but tight enough so that you know that it's going to lay flat when you sew it. So you just want a good foundation for sewing it flat. So I'm just gonna, you know, tie up the hair. So right now I'm taking the needle through the cap, having a little difficulty here, and then I'm puncturing the lace closure. So that's my first stitch, and then I'm going to do that again in the same spot through the cap, and then puncturing the lace closure. So I do this about 3-4 times in one spot to start, and then I just continue stitching. So as you can see, I'm just going under through the cap, puncturing the lace closure, and pulling it through. And as you can see, the T-pins are just kind of helping guide where I'm going. So I'm just going to continue to do this, and I'm going to get to a stopping point soon, and then we're going to do that on the other side just to pull it taut and make sure that we're making sure that the closure is laying as flat as it can be as we sew. So I'm just going to add an additional T-pin here. I'm going to repeat the same steps. Through the cap, puncture the closure, pull through, and repeat. So again, this is just my method, and this is not how I always do it, but I figured like this would be the easiest method to show you if you're making your first wig, and this will be easier to follow. So I'm just gonna sew the other side of this closure, and just making sure that the tension is right, and I'm gonna get to a stopping point as well. And then when I get to that stopping point, and I'm just readjusting the T-pins as I need to make sure that the closure is straight and flat, and I'm just going to continue to sew. Now when I get to this stopping point, then I'll continue sewing on the other side, and I'll eventually meet the closure in the middle. Don't forget to readjust your T-pins as you go along, because as you sew, you're going to need to readjust them to kind of like keep the closure in place and have a great guideline for sewing it down. So I'm just going to continue to do that through the cap, then through the closure. And I'm just trying to make this as detailed as possible so that you guys can see what's going on. But you need to make sure you securely sew this closure down. And don't worry about, you know, fancy sewing, because we're going to sew over this again. But you just want to make sure that the foundation is as stable as it can be. And again, move your T-pins to make sure the closure is laying flat throughout this whole sewing process. Okay, got that? Good, because nobody wants a bulky closure, honey. That closure needs to be laid, and it starts right here. And this usually takes the longest, in my opinion, because again, you're just like removing it. And you see how I have a little hump there? I'm trying to get rid of that. But again, readjusting your T-pins and just kind of getting it together works the best. Okay, so then when I've sewn both sides and the thread meets each other, at this point I'm going to make sure that I secure each side, and then I'm going to kind of like tie them together, because you know, you don't want your wig falling apart. Like, that's so not cute. Not at all. I promise throughout the video I have sped a lot of this up, but I felt this was important, so I kept it at its original speed, I believe. So we've tied our closure. We're going to trim that off, and now the fun part. Here I'm just gonna adjust my straps on the side. I like to pin them down because I do intend on sewing over them. You don't have to do this, but I know the size of my head, so I just do it because I know it's gonna fit my head. But you do what works for you. So on to starting to sew our weft. So I'm going to puncture the cap, and I'm gonna go through the weft to start. Okay, I'm gonna do that 2 or 3 times, and just make sure that I have a good starting point for sewing down this weft. And these wefts are doubled, and so now I'm just going to take the T-pin and kind of try and align my weft so that I have a guideline of sewing it. And because it's doubled, you want to make sure that you kind of make it easier on yourself just by pinning them down so that you have a guideline to sew. Now for the remainder of the bundle, I am going to sew around the weft. So basically I'm not puncturing the weft here. I'm just going under it. I don't know what the correct term is right now, and I'm already doing this voiceover, so yeah. So this method here will help, you know, prevent shedding, and it just makes it easier for you to reuse it, because when you puncture the wefts and you're cutting them out, you can make a mistake, but mostly going through the wefts promotes shedding, and you don't want that. So I'm just going to continue to do that. Go down and then up. Again, some people sew the opposite way. Some people kind of do this fancy loop method. Me personally, I just like to sew and make sure that my stitches are neat, close together, tight, so that the construction of the wig is as stable as it can be. And I'm just going to go through this towards the end. Now when I get to the end, that's when I have to start going through the weft again and puncturing it. And again, remember to remove your T-pins as needed, because, you know, let's face it, it can't stay there. So now I'm gotten to the end of the weft, and I use the fold over method. So here I'm going to kind of demonstrate how I do that. And again, you have to puncture the weft when you get to the end. So I'm going to do my last loop around here, and then I'm going to separate the double weft, and I am going to puncture the first weft here and sew it down to the cap and go through it to secure it down. And then I'm going to go back and do that to the second weft and make sure that it's down, and then I'm going to fold it over one at a time once again. So I'm going to go through the cap, and then I am going to go through the weft again and make sure it's secure, and then I'm going to do that one more time because I want where I'm folding the wefts to be as flat as possible. So for the second piece of the weft, I'm going to just repeat the same process, making sure that I sew it down securely and that it's as flat as can be before I continue to sew on the rest of the wefts. So I'm not going to talk through this part. I'm just, you know, putting T-pins, lining up my wefts so that I could sew. Alright, so now that I've sewn, I believe, 2 of the bundles upwards and doubled them, this space here is where you make or break your wig. So now I'm going to take a single track and sew it onto the closure. This is muy importante. So again, I'm going to go through the closure and then through the weft itself to start. This helps so much with blending your closure. The worst thing you can have is a gap. So when you sew this on to your closure, this weft, it just makes blending so flawless, and it lays super flat, and you don't look like you have a gap. And you know that's important. So again, I'm just sewing it around. I'm going through the closure and then under the weft. So I'm not going through the wefts, I'm going under it. And then I'm just going to use the T-pin to kind of use it as my guideline, because you know T-pins are everything when making a wig. You know, you gotta have a guideline, guys. Like, come on. Make sure you stitch close together as you can, and just as neat and as secure as you possibly can. And again, just move the T-pins. Box. The only thing new on this wig is the closure. This used to be a Upart wig, and it's just being remade into a closure wig because you know fall is coming. So again, fold those wefts over. See how flat that is? And again, use your T-pins and just sew, baby. You got this. You got this. So this is what my wig looks like. Okay, I'm gonna brush it on out, and then I'm gonna, you know, just comb everything out because I'm gonna go wash it. I wash my wigs after I make them. Don't ask me why, I just do. Probably be easier to wash the bundles, but hey. So now I'm gonna turn the cap inside out and take off all that extra styrofoam, and I'm gonna cut away the extra cap that is underneath where the closure is. Snip, snip, snip. And then next, I'm going to cut off the extra lace that is in front of the closure, aka the baby hairs that look super awkward any damn way, but what can you do? So it's time to wash this thing. Isn't she pretty? So I've washed it, and I wasn't going to include this clip, but here it is. So I'm basically just blow drying the unit, and I'm really focusing on the closure because this is how I get the closure to lay flat. Before flat ironing it, I just kind of like take it and blow dry it, and that's it. I'll see you guys in another video.